Okay, commodities. So starting off with copper, find copper quite hard to call sometimes, but at least the technical levels are playing out quite well. So here's support 3.55-ish. It's been holding out decently last couple of trading days. Maybe have a small bounce back to this 3.67 zone. Very, very small bounce it would be. But then we have mini resistance, the high from back here, but also more importantly, the descending line. Copper, the markets were not exactly green on Monday. The copper wasn't exactly strong, but we did have a weak dollar. So it kind of makes sense the copper's slightly up. And I do think the dollar's going to go lower. So that could also help copper. But again, the market, I think, will drop more. And I just don't know which way it's going to go. Whether if the markets flush heavily, but so does the dollar, what does copper do? Does it go up because of the dollar or does it go down because of the markets? I think it would go down if it has to choose. But on a day like Monday, yesterday, where the markets were sort of sideways, but the dollar was down a lot, I think it makes sense for copper to just drift a little higher. Plus, it's on pretty important support, so that also helps. Natural gas, I did think we'd have a bit of a curl before we hit the three prior resistance, which should be support. And actually, we did curl straight away. So let's see if we can surge back up to 3.5 and then start to hit to zones like 4, 4.5, this gap fill zone, but let's get to 4 at least. I want to see a close above this 3.5 zone, preferably 3.55. So let's just go back up. This thing has a long way up to go. I don't want all of this suspense just for this small pop and then we flush. And oh my God, that would be horrible. But I don't think the technicals or the fundamentals or even the geopolitics suggest that it would be just a weak pop. So I think natural gas should go higher. Oil coming down a bit. Um, you know, I mean, I'm not really sure if that's just because it's time to just take a bit of a rest before going back up, but yeah, it doesn't need to go up constantly back to 94. I do think we're going to end up testing 95. Tensions in the Middle East. Also, oil's been a bit of a fear trade, and yesterday was not exactly the big fear day, but well, let's just play it technically. We have support down here, 82. We have resistance around 95, 94, 95. Maybe we just drift a bit sideways before going back up to 95. But I do think we have to go back up to 95, actually. I mean, with what's going on in the world, supply, demand, the dollar also, I think will go down. But, it didn't help yesterday, right? The dollar went down a decent amount, like 0.5% the DXY, and yet oil was down. So that's not the strongest day. It's something I didn't actually expect, but let's see. Oil's allowed to have a little day of rest, or let's see what happens with oil. Uranium, sideways, waiting for that curl to pop. Yesterday, markets were slightly red, at least by the close, but the dollar was down. So uranium was sort of in the end a bit unchanged, right? It looks like a green candle, but it's not. It's unchanged. So that makes sense, kind of following the markets, but with the dollar down, the dollar doesn't really impact uranium too much. So I think it's more the markets and uranium's own supply demand. So sideways day. But again, what happens if the markets start to flush? Do we go lower? And if we do, if the markets really hit new lows, like the Russell hits new bear market lows, do we, people like me who are not in uranium but want to be, who missed the train, do we get lucky and get uranium at a very cheap price, let's say, just because of the markets? Do we get lucky in that respect? That might be possible. So anyway, let me look at gold real quick. I won't make a separate video because it's a quick one. So gold's just drifting sideways, because well, it's just not ready to pop out yet. I did think gold would go back down to 1950. We had an early drop to like low 1960s, so almost in the 50s. But then it sort of, made up its losses by the end of the day. But let's see. I don't know. I really don't know what to expect. Do we go back down to 1950 or do we go lower, maybe to the low 1900s, retested descending? Or do we actually just sideways and then pop and start to close above 1985 and maybe go straight through 2000? Let's see. Silver, by the way. Well, silver did have not the best close, though. Look at that yesterday. Closed at low of day. So that's weaker than gold, respectively. Still, it has been weaker on the way up. And this little retracement continued, but still we're just drifting sideways. Today it's okay, actually it's up more than gold. So it's still in a holding sideways pattern. So resistance remains resistance around 1980. Let's just see what happens.